and that even Brother Chef from the Black.
We building a movement, community-specific practices to reclaim the old YMCA in Harlem, 135th Street, 181, from a slum landlord. We pulling on all of our community tactics. We got more updates coming on that September 29th. Don't miss that. The fight for community-specific programs against displacement, land grab, and ethnic cleansing. We also got an article coming out on that as well. The fourth web series is going to be October 13th. And we're going to be talking about Saruj, Mayat, and the movement, reflecting on the nonprofit and how the nonprofit is bringing a lot of interpersonal trauma and struggle across organizations, within organizations, and how H.O.L.L.A and other folks have created, spaces and analysis to understand this and build programs to try to heal against this. So we are going to be talking about that October 13th. We also got an article coming out on that as well. And then lastly, we're going to end the web series this year on October 20th with the Kibaka, Ellis, and Lukman Institute on non-traditional approaches to human and healing justice. And we're going to talk about the Institute to continue the legacy of the non-traditional approach that is coming soon. We also want to give a special shout out to the Long Attica Revolt. This is the 53rd anniversary of the Attica Rebellion that just is going on right now. So shout out to all of our elders and our ancestors who continue that struggle, who is a part of that struggle, and who struggle so that we could be here. Jasiri is back in the building. Technology.
Sorry.
I threw in some updates for you. I was just wrapping up with the 53rd anniversary to Attica. Anything else you want to say?
Yes. So I apologize about that. As I said, September 29th, we have a webinar around, as I said, ethnic cleansing, the push out of programs in our community, the push out of Black businesses, of Black homeowners, of the Black residents in Harlem, but also in New York City. And, that's very important. So you should tune in September 29th. Also, October 13th, we have a conversation, Saruj Ma'at in the movement. Saruj Ma'at is an ancient Kemetic term. It is called restoring balance, restoring justice, right? Not restorative justice, but restoring justice, right? Restoring justice in the movement because there is, turmoil. And a part of the turmoil is what we're going to be talking about today, program pacification, right? Another conversation we're going to have October 20th is about the Kibaka, Ellis, and Lukman Institute of Non-Traditional Approaches in Human and Healing Justice. It's a launch to this institution of our ancestral memory and our scholarship to really stand on self-determination and really push forward our critical analysis of our legacy. And with that, I will pass for our libation.
This is for the ancestors. I said, this is for the ancestors. I said, this is for your ancestors. I said, this is for our ancestors. I said, I came to heal what you came to do. I said, I came to build what you came to do. I said, we came to feel what y'all came to do. But if we got to kill just to make it through, we gonna make sure we make it true. But I said we all came to heal what they came to do. I said we all came to feel what they came to do. I said we all came to build what they came to do. But if we gotta kill just to make it through, brah, we gonna make sure we make it true. Snap it up, snap it up. We are live on Facebook talking about the restorative justice co-optation of the non-traditional approach. Healing justice is our strategy, responding to historical tragedy. I said we came to heal. Y'all know where we accent. Don't act like the trauma don't keep us relapsing. I said we came to heal. Y'all know where we accent. Don't act like the trauma don't keep us relapsing. I said you could heal without their permission. I said you could heal without their permission. Holla, we could build without their permission. The non-traditional approach will not be colonized, cannot be colonized. It's Afrocentric. It wasn't just Nas, but Kemet, Kibaka, Ellis, Kathy, Lukman. Many of our ancestors said it was written. And holla is just following tradition. That's why we stay in community specific. But don't get caught slipping. Philanthropy be pimping. That's why our grassroots leadership be shifting. And the restorative justice paradigm is wicked. First it stole our community-specific activism. Now it done teamed up with capitalism. We see right through that fake wisdom, straight into its racism. White supremacy be lying. Our elders are dying. Our ancestors are crying. And we still haven't won yet. And it's like a sad contest because so many of us are joining the nonprofit industrial complex while our Black liberation tradition is fading into the sunset. Nah, we ain't done yet. How you gonna turn in your community-specific roots? That's the concrete you rose from. Fuck these grants, LOIs, FRPs. These crackers owe one. And how they gonna fund us on the land that they stole from? And how they gonna fund us on the land that they stole from? Bars. That was for our ancestors. So we want to get into updates real quick before we get into the meat of our conversation. So I'll pass it to Jasiri to give some spirit about one of our political prisoners, Rev. Joy Powell.
So peace, 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 all power to the people. Free political prisoners. We H.O.L.L.A is supporting and are a part of the Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition, supporting political prisoners here on the Northeast of United Snakes. And we are supporting Reverend Joy Powell and her campaign. So, you know, folks could, you know, search up Reverend Joy Powell's story on the Jericho's website and also on the curfest.com website. And you could write letters to Joy Powell. We also are sending food packages to Joy Powell every month. So you could send donations to H.O.L.L.A. So then we could put together those funds for her food packages every month. They cost about $400. And, you know, this is for us to take care of people, of our people on the inside who is fighting for freedom, talking back against police brutality, mass incarceration, and violence on our communities from various systems. Also, there's a lot of violence happening in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility where Reverend Joy Powell is being held at. Officers are brutally and violently attacking the women there and the trans women there. And, you know, we need to have a transparent investigation done by the state of investigations. We need a transparent investigation done. So we're asking folks to put a call out to the state of investigations as a call of action to ask for a transparent investigation happening at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility where women are being violently attacked.
Is that OSI, the Office of Special Investigations, or you?
Yes, yes. Office of Special Investigations. Yes. Also, we are also still in the, you know, celebration of CurveFest. And as we heard from our last webinar, CurveFest is a local action to really teach each other about political prisoners and prisoners of war, and to write letters to political prisoners and prisoners of war as we really have conversations about what it means to fight for freedom and what did these brothers and sisters do that made them that the state criminalized them, that the state framed them and called them terrorists, when actually they made programs to feed our children, right? They made programs to heal our communities.
Talk about it.
Right? They brought services to our communities when the state did not bring those services to our community. And the state still, as we talk today about program pacification, that's what we're talking about. Programs that were stolen from the Black liberation tradition to heal our communities, then spit back out to us by the United States that are watered down and that are actually killing us instead of curing us and taking care of our humanity and our human rights needs. So it's very important to learn about political prisoners because they are captured freedom fighters, right? And we still need our soldiers and warriors to come home, and we need to be protecting them and taking care of them. So CurveFest is happening in Philly, October 5th. So we want folks to make it down to Philly, October 5th. If you're following the H.O.L.A's Instagram, How Our Lives Link All Together, you can go to our Instagram and our Facebook. You can find the flyer to the Philly CurveFest, right? You can find the location and the time. CurveFest is also happening in Houston, October 26th, right? And if you're trying to find the location, you can find that on CurveFest website, curvefest.com, CURBFEST.com. Thank you. With that, I pass to get us started.
Yeah. Shout out to Decolonizing Social Work at Hunter College and Europe, man. We had a dope event last night, intimate in the Lower East Side, a donation fundraising event for H.O.L.A. And we got a chance to watch our documentary and meet some cool people that we hope to continue organizing with in the future. So shout out to Angelica and Sarah and Stephanie, who all performed last night as well. So we excited, man. Today is a chance for us to share publicly, you know, really in the first time, something we've been talking about and studying for the last 4 or 5 years, and had many conversations privately with many of our comrades, people that do restorative justice. And this is really beautiful that we're making this a public conversation, really talking about the title of the article, A Case Study on Restorative Justice, Co-optation of the Non-Traditional Approach. Like, what's so restorative about white supremacy, program pacification, and counterinsurgency warfare? We are going to go through, it's about 6 sections in the article. We want to kind of spend some time going through each of those sections so that people could get some verbal analysis to what we wrote. We want to start off with just a quote from the opening, and then I'll pass it to Jasiri and we'll start running through some analysis. This quote is from Dr. Alice Green, one of our ancestors, and she's talking about Eddie Ellis, another one of our ancestors that's very important to the non-traditional approach. Dr. Green said, I met Eddie Ellis in the early 1980s. He was a former leader of the Black Panther Party in Harlem, New York. I met him at Greenhaven Correctional Facility where he was serving 25-year prison sentence as a result of FBI counterinsurgency COINTEL program, which targeted him and accused him falsely of killing a man he didn't even know and gave him an incredibly long prison sentence. In 1990, the Quakers sponsored a conference at Greenhaven Correctional Facility. I was fortunate to be in attendance. Eddie presented the most powerful and thought-provoking lecture that I think we all can benefit from today. He talked about the struggle for the non-traditional approach to criminal and social justice and how we must all be a part of that struggle. So I think we all can benefit, whether we are professionals, government officials, or social justice advocates. If we listen to what Eddie had to say, contemplate it, use it as we engage in the struggle for social change and reform in the criminal justice system. Dr. Alice P. Green, counterinsurgency warfare has seriously attacked our ancestors, elders, and communities of the Black liberation struggle. Eddie Ellis and the non-traditional approach is one case to study, and we're going to do some of that today.
Thank you, thank you. And with that, we want to start with talking about, prisons are warfare, right? Prisons are technologies of domestic warfare. As we know, the fact that, American people, African people here in America have been under attack by the government, right? From settler colonization, chattel enslavement, Jim Crow laws, to new Jim Crow laws, throughout the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, and the new African independence movement. From every struggle, we have been fighting against this warfare that has been happening on Black people, right? And since the creation of the American KKK criminal punishment system, we have understand that there is a huge contradiction between the fundamental philosophy of this system and the concepts of freedom, liberty, and democracy, and race. And there has been no, since chattel slavery and those who have benefited from slavery, there has been no reconciliation. And that is the true reality for African people, right? And that this national contradiction continues to persist today through communities and institutions maintained by Eurocentric analysis and views of punishment and views of the system. And that those views are used instead of a Pan-African ideology of the war, of the criminal punishment system. And because of that, we understand that prisons are war. And I want to share a quote from Dr. Ori's book, Tip of the Spear, right? Dr. Ori says, prisons are a microcosm of empire and zones of declared domestic war, zones that are linked to imperial and officially acknowledged wars abroad. prisons are war. They are state strategies of race war, class war, colonization, and counterinsurgency. The criminal punishment system is connected to other structures within the society as a means to surveil, criminalize, and terrorize Black communities as a form of undeclared war. And in this analysis, we understand that prison, which is, like I said, domestic warfare, is the results of white supremacy, science, colonization, and counterinsurgency. And we would love for you to read more from our analysis in our paper. H.O.L.A's response to this warfare.
Talk about it.
This article's response to this warfare. We're talking about the non-for-profit industrial complex, peacemaking criminology, restorative justice, transformative justice, the $1 Million Block Study, Jeremy Travis's analysis, but they all came home, but they all come home. For their roles in program pacification, in plagiarism, and stealing from the non-traditional approach to criminal and social justice. This article argues and uses the non-traditional approach to human and healing justice as a framework, as a shield for resistance to the attempted erasure, and co-optation by the field of restorative justice, which is being promoted and funded by the state and the war.
We really want to ground the non-traditional approach. A lot of times you hear people talking about the 7 neighborhoods, Eddie Ellis, Larry White, the Greenhaven think tank, right? But oftentimes people don't talk about what are the parents to the non-traditional approach? Where did it come from, right? So we really want to ground the non-traditional approach in its accurate history, which comes from the legacy of Black August and the Long Attica Revolt, right? And Black August is a libation to our ancestors. It's a practice of paying homage to our elders, our community members, and our ancestors for their struggles for liberation, right? So for Black revolutionaries, African people, and anti-colonial movements, Black August symbolized a long tradition of prison, incarceration, liberatory struggles of sacrifice and resistance for Black people. It symbolized Black liberation struggles to organize local communities to dismantle systems of incarceration, right? Black August is a spirit and an opportunity like Baba Sekou did with Assata Shakur, right? To free all of our political prisoners and prisoners of war, right? And we could trace this back to the Black, Aboriginal, Native Americans, to the Maroon Society, to Nat Turner, which George Jackson really talked about Nat Turner, because a lot of Black August is framed around Nat Turner, to the Haitian rebellion and revolution, right? To Jonathan Jackson, George Jackson. There's many experiences of our people fighting against incarceration. The Long Attica Revolt really summarizes, particularly in the late 60s, early 70s, how there was a formation of the Black liberation movement all across the country in jails and prisons that were doing insurrections, taking over the prisons, right? And when you get to Attica, it's not something that pops up out of a vacuum. It's part of a larger genealogy of Black August, of the Long Attica Revolt. And I think that's really important because Attica, in our strategy of militancy, of revolution, building off of George Jackson in the late, going towards the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, sprung Attica, right? And the NTA is directly connected to Attica because a lot of that movement moved to Greenhaven, right? And we needed to develop a new methodology, a new strategy to fight the war. But, I stopped there just to let you know that the NTA is the Long Attica Revolt, is Black August. And when we experienced what we experienced in Attica, our past the Black Guard, that's when we started developing the new prison movement, which was something Black Guard to give us some wisdom on. You're on mute, Black Guard. So free all our political prisoners, free them all, free them all, free all our political prisoners.
Free them all, free them all.
Free them all.
You kind of, you hit it right on the head. You know, Black August is our libation. That's our commemoration to the ancestors during this time of struggle. Black August also encompassed Attica. Attica was a rebellion that shocked the world. But Attica was a rebellion that grew up out of Black liberation, that grew up out of our movements in the streets, that grew up out of the state violence that pushed our people into the prison system. And once they pushed our people into the prison system that was down with Black liberation and fighting for our people for freedom and justice all around, from healthcare, education, in every sphere, they had formations, they had analysis, they had a teaching, and that all of that went into the prison system. Once it went into the prison system and Attica exploded because the men said, y'all gonna treat us like men. We are no longer laying down. And they fought. And they fought from California, that's Black August, from California to New York. And when they fought, this is how the new prison movement came about. Because the past prison movements was based on the Quakers, spirituality, it was based on abolitionists, but without a program component to the abolitionists. So the new prison movement said, yo, hold up, we got analysis. And they developed what we call a basic question. And the basic question outlined the real turmoil that our people was in when it came to the criminal justice system. And the basic question in short is, how is it that Blacks and Latinos are 85% of New York City, of New York State, but at the very same time is over 85% of the prison system? That alone shows you that is a disparity, that there's a—
Say that question again, say that back, you say that back again. You didn't get that right.
All right, I did it right. Blacks and Latinos represent 25 to 28% of New York State population, but at the very same time represent over 85% of New York State prison system. And what's even more alarming, out of the New York State prison system, 75% of the people in the New York State prison system come from 7 neighborhoods in New York City. This alone shows that there's a direct relationship between Blacks and Latinos and the oppression of New York State prison system.
Talk about it.
So the new prison movement developed strategies and analysis to attack this, to impede the influx of Blacks and Latinos coming into the prison system. And they had all types of strategies, from political action committees to moratorium on prisons to good time, and what we are talking about, healing justice. And we'll get into healing justice too, because that's a part of the collective healing, which is political, and healing justice isn't just individual, it's a collective thing. The NTA is very important. When you hear NTA, you must say non-traditional approach. We are attacking the system non-traditionally. And we're attacking it from an Afrocentric perspective. This is what the new prison movement was on. And the new prison movement wasn't just men. We also had our female counterpart in Bedford Hills creating those programs and those analyses and getting colleges back and creating AIDS programs, which was called PACE. So we was doing it within the prison system, but the key to that is what Corey said. Black August represents the libation of those ancestors, those Black Liberation Army, the Black Panthers, the Black Lords, the Weather People, all of these organizations that was pushing into the prison system with their formations and their analysis that gave us the impetus to do the things that we had to do within the prison system so that we could come home as assets instead of liabilities. With that, I'm gonna pass the mic.
So just to keep it flowing, man, we're given the legacy of the non-traditional approach coming from Black August and the Long Attica Revolt, and really talking about how the new prison movement consists of prison cadres in Green Haven, Bedford Hills, the Resurrection Study Group, and how they built methodologies that was building strategies within the prison that connected to the community, right? That connected to the community. And this is a strategy that was developed post-Attica, because after our Long Attica Revolt, we needed a new methodology. So you should understand the non-traditional approach as a Pan-African praxis to preserve our practices and our rituals and our knowledge systems that work in and outside of the system, right? It should be clearly understood that this is a methodology, epistemology, and ontology. This is how we be, right? This ain't just words and facts, right? This is ontology, how we be. This is our African worldview, our Pan-African worldview of who we are for a long, long, long distance, and our reality of the war that been impacting us. Two, it's a critique to the status quo, the criminal justice systems and community institutions that replicate European ideology and don't understand the African Mayafa. And three, it's a community-specific praxis to resurrect individuals, right? So that they fight towards Black liberation in the neighborhoods most impacted by the crime-generative factors. So that's important. And the NTA, in the strategy, huh?
No, I just wanted to let our viewers know to go to HO.LA.com and pull up the article as we talk, and pull it so that you'll have that article and you can go more into depth of what we're talking about.
HO.LA.com. We got our documentary. Our website is fire. Go to the website, pull up the article. We about to go into the next section talking about the literature review coming from our non-traditional analysis, right? This is really coming from our resurrection process of remembering, right? We stand on a legacy of non-traditional approaches from the new prison movement, right? So we've been seeing alternatives in the justice systems since the early 60s, right? So we are going to give an outline from our non-traditional analysis, how these alternative justice systems develop within the prison system starting in the late 60s, right? So we're going to talk about 6 critical areas. Hopefully we do this fast because we ain't got that much time. First, we're going to talk about the origins of these alternative systems, which we kind of already did. So we're going to hit that kind of fast, the non-traditional approach to criminal and social justice, which was developed in the late 60s, right, to the 1980s. Then we're going to talk about restorative justice, which stole and co-opted from the non-traditional approach we started developing in the late 70s towards the 80s. We're going to move on to transformative justice, which was developed in the 1990s, to healing justice, which was developed in the early 2000s, to human justice, which became a word in 2012, but we're going to show you that it got earlier roots in the 1990s, right? And we're going to close with our new analysis, the non-traditional approach to human and healing justice, which combines human justice, healing justice, grounded by the non-traditional approach, which was formulated by H.O.L.L.A and the Center for New Leadership over the last 5 years. So with that being said, I'll pass it back to Blackguard to give us a little bit more about the resurrection process and community-specific process of the non-traditional approach. Now, sometimes people talk about the 7 neighborhoods and talk about the historical perspective, but they sometimes forget that the healing programs and the resurrection programs come from the NTA as well. So give them some ideas on, what that's about,
The NTA is phenomenal in itself. Corey, show them that package of the NTA, and you could hit us on our email on our website to get a copy of that NTA package. That NTA package like I said earlier, it comes from the formations of a lot of Black liberation movements in the early 60s, even dating back to the 50s. And this analysis gave us a deep understanding of how the state balanced co-optation and just the how can I say, the disrespect that Europeans and white supremacy shows Blacks. But it puts it in an Afrocentric perspective. It puts it in a paradigm which illustrates to us not only what happened, but what we could do to make things better. The non-traditional approach has three basic components. The first one is a historical perspective, which traces Blacks and Latinos coming into the prison system from the plantation to prison, and we even take it back to Africa. The second part is the direct relationship, which that shows a direct relationship between Blacks and Latinos in the criminal justice system and shows the political ramifications around that, and the 7 neighborhoods and what we call the crime generating factors that pushes us into prison, because these crime generating factors are so much influx inside of our communities. And the last part is the three program components. These are three program components that if you want to have a successful program and make them assets instead of liabilities, you have to incorporate these three program components. One study group that came up out of the non-traditional approach was the Resurrection Study Group. The Resurrection Study Group has a lot of SNCC, CORE, RAM, a lot of the Black liberation movements inside of them. And it details what we have to do, but it is based on reconciliation, reconciling with our communities, understanding that we have caused harm in our communities, that we was those drug dealers, that we was those murderers, but we have to turn it around now. And we have to understand that now is our job to help the community by educating ourselves, by studying the non-traditional approach and how it's written. When we look into, we have a part in there, it's a 5 R's. These are 5 R's of reconciliation. This is the work that we do as men in prison. This is the personal work that we have done in prison. And a lot of times we come home and all this work is done and our family don't understand. You know what I'm saying? They like, nah, he faking. But they don't know that we actually went through this work, that we went through this resurrection process. The Resurrection Study Group had a 25-week course. You know, you had to be in it for 25 weeks straight. You have to learn liberation theology. You have to learn personal development. You have to learn the non-traditional approach. You have to learn healing. Justice is what it's called today. But back then, in 1989, it was called purging session. And we're going to get into how healing justice has developed throughout the time. In Bedford Hills, you had the same type of formations with the Bedford Hills sisters by creating programs and telling stories. They had a storytelling program that got them to share their harm, got them to talk about the harms that they did. And this is the long legacy of the non-traditional approach and its program components. But please get the article. You got to go to our page. You got to read this article because we hitting points. But when you get into this article, it's 30 pages. Get into the article and see what we're talking about.
And just to be clear, you know, we talking about psychological warfare because nobody really know the history like this because of program pacification, right? The erasure and the control of the African mind. Amos Wilson said that we've been particularly fighting psychological warfare for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that some of us may think that military war is really important, but actually psychological war is probably the most important factor when conquering and dominating the people. And over the last 100 years, as we showed with Eddie Ellis and many of our Black liberation traditions, we've been under attack. Counterinsurgency, COINTELPRO, universities, CIA, right? Nonprofits. In the restorative justice paradigm, is part of erasing our history. So the stuff that Blackguard just laid out becomes muddy, becomes unclear, becomes fog, the fog of capitalism, the fog of a system of deceit, of colonization clogs up our genetic memory, right? And we start thinking that restorative justice created the 5 R's of restorative justice, when actually the 5 R's of restorative justice come from the NTA 5 R's of reconciliation, like Blackguard was saying earlier. We start to believe that the $1 million block analysis is original analysis when the $1 million block analysis comes from the NTA, right? Another thing that I want to highlight as we close out is that there's a long history between the NTA and the restorative justice paradigm that goes back to the early 70s when the Greenhaven think tank, working with the ministerial services, after they done started doing their own healing work, they got the Quakers to come into prison after Attica. They was the first people to come into the prison after Attica.
Talk
right?
about it.
And the NTA already had the NTA approach, and they had seminars trying to merge the ideas with the Quakers and the Peace Church. And after a couple of seminars, Larry Lukman White, Eddie Ellis, Hassan Gell, the Greenhaven think tank said that they couldn't merge with the restorative justice because it was a Eurocentric analysis, right? It didn't come from a Pan-African analysis, and it lacked understanding of how to address the old and the entire criminal justice system, right? And it didn't respond to Black people's direct relationship and historical relationship to the criminal punishment system, right? And we told them then, when they try to program pacify us and co-opt us back then, that that wasn't an analysis that was needed for the Black community. That in fact, that it needed to be informed by the non-traditional approach, and it was still babyish in its development. It needed more time to evolve. And we stay clear after we go through this literature that restorative justice is still not listening to our elders, still not addressing the direct relationship, and still very babyish in its analysis and programs to address the issues of this large violent system that we call the criminal justice system, which Jasiri has said earlier is really counterinsurgency warfare. And it's be clear that all of these programs, restorative justice, reentry programs, they work from a criminal justice mindset and analytical framework. That's why they don't solve the problems that we're going through, because it's not an analytical framework of criminal justice that we're dealing with. It's a framework of warfare that we're dealing with. And we also need these programs that are connected to the criminal justice system to stop using that criminal justice analytical framework when dealing with our communities, because our communities are at war and the criminal justice system is undeclared war, right? It's counterinsurgency. In closing, restorative justice has other roots in critical criminology, right? After it stole our practices, it tried to theorize itself in peacemaking criminology within criminal criminology in the late 70s, early 70s, my bad, late 60s, right? And peacemaking criminology, you know, is the theoretical home where the practice of restorative justice and transformative justice come from. And peacemaking criminology also still all of its thinking and analysis from so-called peace activists like Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, Malcolm X, right? These are people that fought against war, right? But all of the programs that come from peacemaking criminology, like the Mennonites, the Quakers, and restorative justice, they all work with people, systems, and institutions and corporations that start and maintain the war. They work with judges, DAs, politicians, law enforcement, the military, bureaucrats, right? So they're giving us this theoretical story that they are anti-war, but all of their programs and practices in our neighborhoods start and maintain the war. Restorative justice, according to Howard Zier, this is what restorative justice tries to do. Restorative justice repairs. At minimum, we address victims' harm and needs and hold offenders accountable to put the right, those harmed, and involve victim offenders and communities in the process. They in that victim offender language, right? Right, so we want to also say that a lot of our indigenous scholars and friends, Daniel Seri, you can check the article, Daniel Seret, many people have clearly said that restorative justice do not come from indigenous traditions, right? It was developed by white people in the criminal punishment system, particularly the peace churches, right? And they were brought in by the Black liberation tradition in the East Coast. And then we told them that those programs do not work for our community, right? There's other indigenous scholars said that they seen how it's there in the Midwest, looking over the Great Lakes, right, into Canada, still in indigenous ceremonial practices before he started theorizing restorative justice in the Midwest. So either way, you're looking at restorative justice history in the Midwest, or you're looking at the AVP program that was developed in the East Coast in the prisons by the Black Liberation Army. The Black Liberation Army is saying that it's not ours. We do not want it. And the indigenous traditions are saying they do not come from them. Restorative justice is a Eurocentric framework developed by Eurocentric people within the criminal punishment system. Real quick, go into transformative justice and I'll pass it to Jasiri. Restorative justice as a program pacification, it intentionally smashes together cultural practices and analysis and concepts to confuse the people, right? Restorative justice is a nomenclature reform that erases, steals, and co-opts the non-traditional approach, right? It should be clear that the non-traditional approach is the origin to all of these justice paradigms. But because of program pacification, these nonprofit systems, the waters are blurry, right? An article written in 2005 said that transformative theories or transformative justice get their roots from transformative powers that was coined by AVP, right? Started in Green Haven. And we know that was started by the Green Haven think tank, the New Prison Movement, right? So transformative justice, which gets its roots from transformative powers, was a program of the Green Haven think tank, the AVP program. But over time, people have erased that history. So the Black liberation tradition, the long Attica revolt, the legacy of Black August is not connected to transformative justice. Another thing in restorative justice, smashing of these cultural concepts and alternative practices, in most conversations, healing justice and the non-traditional approaches of resurrections, they are erased in this conversation. Most of the time, we're talking about restorative justice, we're talking about transformative justice, we're talking about how transformative justice comes from restorative justice. But in this conversation, healing justice and non-traditional approaches, strategies of fighting against state violence become a distant memory, right? Mimi Kim has warned us that restorative justice is like a tsunami. It's been bubbling up over the last 15 to 20 years, and now it's here. And it's not a good tsunami. It's not a tsunami that's going to leave us swimming in a good way with dolphins. It's going to wreck our boats. It's going to destroy our good work, right? So that our strategies of fighting against state violence and healing our communities from the non-traditional approach, from the Black liberation legacy, will be a distant memory. And I'm going to pass it to Jasiri because human justice, in the work of human justice and healing justice, has always fought to kind of fight against that co-optation.
Thank you. Resurrect. So I get to, talk about the legacy of human justice, and, we just had a powerful breakdown of the legacy of, the co-optation, right? Of, you know, where we get these concepts and theories from and practices from. And I think that's very, very important because a lot of us do, you know, I hear people talk about, you know, they do restorative justice, but, you know, they can't really say where that thing comes from. So I think it's very important that we're breaking down this analysis for folks, because a part of the erasure, as Amos Wilson talks about, is the undevelopment of Black history. So this history has been undeveloped. It has been hidden and put on rocks and thousands of other rocks, right? So you can't see it. So it's very, very important why we're bringing this analysis to you, because, you know, we need to unclear the air from this fog that we're in. So get into human justice. That's a concept that's been coined from the 1990s. And to start off, we want to talk about the Political Action Committee, which stems from the legacy of the Long Attica Revolt and the non-traditional approach to criminal and social justice. And PAC was developed by the Greenhaven think tank and the Rhetoric Study Group and Dr. Alice Green. On top of, as I said, the concepts of the New Prisons movement. PAC was developed as a formation of people in prison, people who were serving long-term prison sentences, people who were politically conscious in prison, political prisoners, to come together and talk about community issues and as it relates to prison issues, because in the New Prison movement, we understood from the non-traditional approach, from the work that the freedom fighters is doing, who's being pushed into prison, that there were no prison problems but community problems, right? And that the prisons, that the issues that we seen in the prisons were very much the collateral damage and issues that we have in our communities, right? So the Political Action Committee in the 1990s to 1999, they hosted annual legislative conferences at the Greenhaven Correctional Facility, bringing together, as I said, people who are serving learned time sentences, people who created programs within prison, the administration of prisons, local family members and community stakeholders, to really tell the truth that, hey, that the system, right, the criminal punishment system and other systems have not addressed the root cause of the reasons and the reasons and the historical reasons of how Black people, brown people became the majority of the prison system, coming from specific assembly districts, specifically communities, right? And that they needed to address this root cause. And, you know, PAC was so critical that they developed a tactic called prison moratorium, which put a call and a halt on the construction of prisons and redistributed those resources back to the community.
Talk about it.
Now, this was a critical attack on the prison system, right? This was a critical attack. And what they did was, you know, they forced Dr. Alice Green out of the prison. So she wasn't able to continue the work that the PAC was doing with the Restorative Study Group, right? Exactly. This is the counterinsurgency, right? So when Dr. Ori talks about, you know, how the system evolves, this is how it evolves. Every time we create a tactic and we're moving forward, more to the left, more to going towards freedom and self-determination, they create systems, technologies, forces to try to cut us down, right? However, we emerge, right? We emerge because in 1995, Prison Moratorium Project was created. And it was its purpose was to continue the work that PAC was doing, right? The elimination of prisons in the United States, right? Because they still did not address the root cause of Black people's oppression and the oppression of poor people here in America, right? Shout out to Kyung-Ji Ri, right? AKA KJ, who as a young organizer co-created and facilitated Prison Moratorium Project, and reconnected with her roots, connected to Eddie Ellis and the non-traditional approach to criminal social justice. And because of that, the legacy of the NTA continued. And that continued into the creation of the Center for New Leadership on Urban Solutions, which is an organization and a formation that Eddie Ellis created after coming out of prison. And Eddie Ellis, you know, was a political prisoner. He was a part of the Revolutionary Action Movement, right? They called him Key Baka within prison as you know, a teacher, someone who gave the lessons and passed on those lessons, right? So a part of the analysis of human justice is that it's one, coming out of prison and creating the Center for New Leadership. As I said, we started to see, like, they cut PAC down. They was trying to stop the Prison Moratorium Project. So we had to go to another lane. So we created the Center for New Leadership on Urban Solutions, and we created a new analytical framework of human justice, which was the same still coming at the system, right? And leading off of a resurrection process, talking about that we need human development and community healing against the attack that has happened on Black communities. So the human justice framework did not change, but it just continued into a different formation. Human justice launched, the Center for New Leadership launched the Human Justice Campaign in 2012. And one of their understandings was that, you know, we were still healing from the punishment system. We were still healing from the attack that is happening on the Black community. And we knew that the criminal justice system was a lie, that it was an oxymoron, right? That there was no justice within the criminal punishment system. And it was about capitalism, that it was about imperialism, right? It was about winners and losers. And the human justice is a strategy developed by the non-traditional approach, as I said, to continue the fight against co-optation and program pacification. And that led us into the non-traditional approach to, that led us into healing justice. So I passed that to Black.
That was deep. That was healing justice. Kind of covered my part right there. So I'm gonna just say it in short. Human justice is part of healing justice. Human justice is the twin to healing justice. But healing justice is a political framework drawn from lineages of collective care and safety. It also being used by liberation movements for centuries for that collective care and survival. Healing justice isn't just, you know, a personal wellness. You know, healing justice is so we could get a personal wellness so that we could have a collective strength. Healing justice has, as Corey said earlier, came out early 2000s under that term. Like I said, in '89 in Resurrection, we was doing purging sessions. That was healing justice.
Talk about it.
In 1969 in Auburn, they was doing Exodus program where they had healing justice. if we go back to our African sacred science and Council of Elders, and even the rites of passage can be deemed under healing justice. So we have had healing justice for years. The state has co-opted it and stole it and took its tenets from it and turned it into restorative justice and all of this other crazy stuff that's not restorative. How can you restore a justice that's never been justice to us? We've never had justice on this land. So how can you restore that? Restorative justice looks to individuals and mending. It doesn't look to heal. There's a difference between healing and mending. Restorative justice looks to mend. Healing justice, human justice, what Jocelyn said, that's about healing. That's about becoming whole with oneself so that you could be whole in your community. And this is why our liberation movements picked up these tenets of healing justice. This is why they taught healing justice. I ain't gonna belabor that too long. We're gonna move right along and pass that back to Corey.
I'll take it along.
Can you take it?
It's on your series. You cooking.
Yes. Now thank Now, thank you. So we're getting into the non-traditional approach to human and healing justice, right? Which is, you know, our understanding of the continuation of fighting against the war, using our Afrocentric worldview to stay steady on the path that needs and the things that need to be done, as we said about the 3 program components, right? The actual ways that we need to transform ourselves to cleanse ourselves from this Eurocentric ideology, to heal ourselves from a lack of sense of community, lack of loving our Blackness, of who we are, and really creating a sense of community, right? So, you know, this is evolution on standing on, you know, our truth, standing on our rights, standing on our ancestry. And, you know, one of our elders, Dr. Mama Lynn in Hawaii, talked about that you have to go back to your ancestry to get that healing, to do healing, right? That you have to go back to your roots. And at every turn, as you see and as you heard, the state is trying to erase our roots, trying to dilute us from being revolutionary, from fighting for human rights. That is the truth, right? So our non-traditional approach to human and healing justice is our 4 concepts, is our understanding of the war, our understanding of our African sacred science, that we created civilization. How the hell you gonna tell me that we Black people's lazy, Black people this and that? Nah, we created civilization. We knew math, science. We understood nature. We understood that the Kepler was about transformation, right? And then Europeans went ahead and called it a dung beetle, right? So they are continuously stealing our history, stealing our monuments, stealing our land, stealing our knowledge, and then watering it down and calling it something else, right? And we're standing on the healing factor because we have internalized this. That's why we calling each other N words and B words. We don't care about our family. No, healing, human and healing justice, the non-traditional approach to human and healing justice says, nah, we're gonna journey. We're about the journey. We're about the struggle. Sada Shakur said we need to struggle as Black people, right? And we need to struggle to stick together through our disagreements, right? Through our issues, because we have to still go against the enemy. And we are building programs and continuing the programs of our elders and ancestors through the non-traditional approach to criminal social justice.
a human and healing justice as we updated it, right?
Yes, our non-traditional approach to human and healing justice. I'm sorry.
Ashayo, Ashayo. And we are still fighting counterinsurgency as H.O.L.L.A, as babies of the non-traditional approach. So we want to wrap the article up, man. We done covered prisons as warfare. We talked about why H.O.L.L.A was writing this very important article to respond to counterinsurgency. We try to give y'all a history of the non-traditional approach, where it comes from, the Black August and the Long Attica Revolt. We now just broke down the alternative justice frameworks that come from the NTA. We want to give you a quick story about how counterinsurgency is still going on right now. We want to read a quick quote from one of our big brothers, Hiram Rivera. Recently was asked, you know, what are the ways to think about nonprofits has fostered or hindered more radical possibilities in the last 10 years, thinking about the nonprofit industrial complex in the conversation. And he said that, you know, nonprofit organizations were created as charitable organizations at the beginning of the 1900s by the Robert Barons, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, at a time where they was making wealth, mad wealth, hand over fist, with the industrialization of the country, the colonization of the Caribbeans and the Philippines in 1898, free Puerto Rico, right? The advent private property, right? These charitable organizations were built to hide their money, to shield it away from taxation and from being scrutinized by the federal government, and under the disguise of providing support to the poor and needy, right? Another thing he said that was critical, he said, so nonprofit institutions, what are their roles? Like all institutions under philanthropy or this kind of dictatorship of the ruling class we live in, it's counterinsurgency. It's rooted in counterinsurgency, right? Where your movement, social justice movements become bureaucratized. Social change become bureaucratized. Radical movements get bureaucratized. They get siloed into struggles, into individual struggles, right? Not into a mass movement. So you got the educational justice sector, you got the housing justice sector, right? And the funding don't allow people to work with each other. And another thing that Hiram said that's really critical is that these ruling class, the Robert Barons, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, they have wealth and ideology, and they merge their wealth and ideology through philanthropy institutions, right? So this brings us right to the Mayor's Office of Criminal and Criminal Justice, MOC J, and CUNY Institute for State and Local Governance, right? Working with Restorative Justice Initiative, RJI, and a 22-person advisory council. They was working to do a community-based restorative justice initiative to support small and grassroots organizations that have been doing the work for years. $16.5 million were allocated towards them, where they was going to give 16 grants, $300,000 per year to organizations to do this work, responding to closing Rikers, right, and healing communities impacted by the long legacy of Rikers, of incarceration, which the NTA has been responding to. And Mimi Kim said this before in a panel. I should watch the panel related in the article. She said, have y'all been seeing them FRPs? You know, she said, what they look like, how they looking on your end, right? Oh, you know, Office of Violence and Women, working with NYU, they're working millions of dollars to make measures for restorative justice. Now they about to make scientific measures to determine what is a restorative justice practice, right? They've been training DAs and prosecutors in restorative justice the last 4 or 5 years, right? So this is a movement that restorative justice is doing and the FRPs are here. So H.O.L.L.A applied for this grant and we didn't get funded. And it shouldn't be, you know, now that we understand it, it should be obvious because we stand on a non-traditional approach. We come from the Bedford Hill Sisters, the Resurrection Study Group. We come from Baba Sekou Odinga, Assata Shakur, right? The Green Haven think tank, right? And the people who built the programs in our neighborhood to serve our community from the get-go, that been serving our community. But we didn't get the funding. And the point we want to make is not about us not getting state funding. We want to make a point about counterinsurgency tactics to remove grassroots organizations and non-traditional approaches and leadership directly from the people and to replace that with non-profit leadership, right, that is not built from the local community, right? And through these funding practices of nonprofits, for one, they're trying to weave out grassroots leadership, and at the same time, they're trying to get Black leadership hooked on capitalism, right? And we learned this when we interviewed our elder Larry Lukemar White, who said that many of the organizations try to hire him when he came home, and he couldn't really jive with them because they was about reentry. They was about finding people jobs, helping people get housing, but they wasn't about building around the 5 R's and doing the resurrection work and what Jasiri was saying about human justice work, the community healing work, right, necessary to respond to the war, right? So he turned down those jobs and continued doing his NTA work. And if you know Larry Lukemar White, unlike many of these nonprofit leaders and his students who come after him, who got houses and jobs and big cars, right? Because they are working with the nonprofit system, doing Eurocentric programs that don't resurrect our communities, right? And Larry turned down those jobs. And similar, H.O.L.L.A is cool with the state not funding us. We cool with the state not giving us those jobs because we want to make a echo to our community, to our grassroots leadership, that we don't need those jobs to do the work of our community, right? That we come from the non-traditional approach that started these practices, that work with these programs before philanthropy even came into place. And even with philanthropy attacking us, we continue building strategies outside of philanthropy. And everybody in New York should be going crazy right now that H.O.L.L.A is being attacked, that we got kicked out of our building by a slum landlord who's probably connected to the Zionist movement. We are getting attacked by the nonprofit industrial complex, where all we do is serve young people, serve our elders, serve our community, serve people in prison, serve New York City. How do New York City let the babies of the movement, H.O.L.L.A, get attacked by nonprofit industrial complex? So this is a conversation that we are hoping that, yeah, the analysis is important, but we are in a current fight right now, and we need the community to respond to this current fight, and we need our community to continue practicing non-traditional approaches in the midst of this fight and not keep moving to program pacification. And with that, we're gonna close by talking about a call to abolish restorative justice for the African and the Black community. Y'all heard my poem, man. You know, at the beginning, if you didn't go to the beginning, you know, the non-traditional approach will not be colonized, cannot be colonized. It's Afrocentric. It comes from Pan-African ideology.
Yes.
Like Auntie Lynette said, from Hawaii, our indigenous elder at a restorative justice conference with a lot of these restorative justice leaders present. She said, y'all need to go back to your ancestor traditions. And maybe for white people, restorative justice is their ancestor traditions. Use that with white people. Use that with your white community. But when you bring that into our community-specific neighborhoods, when you bring that to the prison system, working with our children, our mothers, our fathers, our young people, you are not giving them the right analysis and the right programs to fight against this war. And we've been asking you from the 60s to the 70s to the 90s to the to 2020 and right now, please stay away from our communities. Right? I will pass it to Jasiri and Blackguard to share some more wisdom. Blackguard is going to talk about restorative justice, own accountability, and healing to the Black community.
You kind of did that already, bro, but I'm gonna add a little bit to it. And you was concise on that. I really hope people understood what you were saying and giving that lineage of, you know, us really doing that work, you know, really doing the healing justice work, and how restorative justice just stole all of our ideas, our techniques, our formations of teaching. They stole it, they co-opted it, and this is what state do. And this is what state violence is. It's like when you go to DSS and they continuously deny you for stuff you're supposed to get. That's your shit. This healing justice is African people stuff. You cannot be denied, but you deny yourself when you buy into restorative justice. You denying yourself your lineages. You denying yourself proper healing. And restorative justice owes healing justice for its footage, for its foundation. You know, they stole this from us. They actually took all of this. The non-judicial approach was position papers in the 60s and 70s. By 1989, 1990, the non-traditional approach became that package that Corey showed you. It was actually written out. This is the first analysis that, Corey, what's some 3 things you say? This is the first analysis that looks at the ethnic status. Come on, Corey, help me out here, because you put that in the right perspective.
And looks at what? I don't know. It's so much. I don't know where to pull from.
The non-traditional is the first analysis.
That looks at the, you know, the Pan-African ideology worldview, our Pan-African ideology worldview of who we are and the war that we in.
Exactly.
Secondly, the critique to the status quo. That's the system and community-based institutions that replicate the system, that don't have analysis of the war. And number 3, it's a community-specific praxis to resurrect individuals from liabilities to assets so that they're able to fight for Black liberation in the crime-generative factors in our neighborhood.
Exactly. And this has never been done. Never have anybody put together analysis that show the direct relationship of Blacks and Latinos in the criminal justice system, shows the economic impact of Blacks and Latinos being oppressed in our 7 neighborhoods that represents over 75% of the criminal justice system. But restorative justice took that package with Jeremy Travis and they co-opted it. They took certain parts out of it and made it restorative justice and made it into something that it wasn't. And now they're getting all of the philanthropy money. They're getting all the nonprofit money, and people that's really doing the healing justice work aren't getting any type of financial assistance. And we always say in H.O.L.L.A, we don't need your money. We're going to do this work regardless. The Black Panthers ain't have a dime, and they started free breakfast programs, free food programs, all types of watch the cops programs without any money at all. So restorative justice owe us, and this article that we put out, we telling them we coming for y'all. We coming for y'all because we know the truth. We know the truth. We know where y'all got this from. We know how y'all utilizing it, and y'all messing our people up with this stuff. You know, you got a lot of organizations that's coming up and they pumping this restorative justice and they messing our people up, and our people aren't healing. And they bring that into their homes, and their homes are being disrupted because they on a false analysis of healing. You can't heal. You can't put a Band-Aid on a cut. You need peroxide. You need some soap and water. You need a lot of other things before you put that Band-Aid on. That's what the non-traditional approach in healing justice is. It's curing that cut before you put that Band-Aid on. That Band-Aid is the last thing. That's the mending. you got to heal it first. And that's why restorative justice owe us so much, because they ain't doing, they just stole it. They just stole it. I'm going to pass with that. Come on. We're trying to wrap this up.
Yes, yes. So, y'all said a lot. I feel, you know, I don't know how much more y'all need around, you know, understanding program pacification, but, you know, we just want to echo what, you know, Dr. Burton said. Dr. Ori Burton said, you know, that prisons are technology of domestic warfare, right? Prison was created off of the enslavement of African Black people. Understand? So, you know, we got to understand this is a part of our historical perspective. You know, we're not saying something that is theory, that is so crazy that no, this is the truth. This is just dead on truth. And we need us just to speak our truth and be real about our truth. You know, the fact that, you know, restorative justice and is alternative to imprisonment, and that it does not solve the root causes of our problems, does not solve the fact that that does not solve the fact that we are the majority of the prison system because of racist institutions, because of structural racism, and a history of colonization, then we do not need restorative justice. We have to actively know as a people to let go of things that does not support the people, does not support our people, right? You hear a lot of people. That's why you should also look up the language letter by Eddie Ellis, because language and words is very important. You hear people saying, I got OCD. Who created that? Who created all these terms that you use, right? That you just map onto yourself and say, this is what I am. No, us as African people have to use the terms from our historical perspective, use the terms from our Black liberation ideology. And that is very important. Restorative justice does not directly deal with the long legacy of institutional racism, but our Black liberation ideology does, right? Right? Restorative justice does not demand for reparations, but our Black liberation ideology does, right? Restorative justice does not address the issues that are continuously happening on the Black community. However, our Black liberation ideology does, right? So we have to be clear about what is useful, what is purposeful for our people, right? Because we are in a psychological warfare, right? Though the physical warfare is coming, what we think and how we think and what we take into our minds and take into our lifestyles is going to replicate our humanity, replicate the rights that we have, right? And we are not protected by laws, and we are not protected by words, right? The only way we can create power is by forcing, coming together and forcing our political ideology to the forefront for our human rights. So that's why, you know, restorative justice is a pacification program. We need to abolish it. We need to, you know, really go back to our African ancestral liberation roots. And that's for all Black people around the world globally, because restorative justice is now sweeping its way across the waters. Sweeping its way across the waters to other indigenous communities, acting like those indigenous communities don't even do healing already, right? And saying this is the approach that these third world people need to be doing, right? So I think that is very important. We also, you know, this is a critique to our, you know, sister, Dr. Fania Davis, that we disagree with the analysis of race and restorative justice, that restorative justice is not the non-traditional approach. It is not African Centered. It's not from our liberation praxis, right? That it continues to incarcerate our people and erase our history, right? And continue to call things, continue to take our programs and plagiarize and get credit for themselves, right? And continue the complacency and the harm that is happening to our communities. And you know, as I just said, we need to let go of things that does not benefit the Black community. We have to move forward now. I also want to, this is a call of action, right? So if you go to our website, we here with H.O.L.L.A, and go to the report section on our website, you can find the report. We ask folks to, you know, repost this article and have, you know, conversations about this article. You could invite us to those group study sessions so we could also have conversations with folks around this article about program pacification. And this is just one study of program pacification. There's so much co-optation that has happened in our legacy, in the erasure of our legacy. This is just a piece, right? Right, and it gets much more deeper as we go. So we also want folks to contact H.O.L.L.A around the paper. If there's any critiques that folks have, we would love to have conversations. And please repost this on your website, repost this on your Instagram and social media, repost the videos, the webinar as well. And, you know, this is, you know, a blast to many organizations, Breathe, Quad, the Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition, Life Comes From It, Fortune Society, right? The Center for Anti-Violence, the New York University Center of Violence and Recovery, right? So many organizations that, you know, need to, we would like to read this article and really sit down with us about this conversation about program pacification and the use of restorative justice and what our future beholds of us and our next generation.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. This was dope, man. I hope y'all, you know, while you reading, you got this soundtrack to go with it, you know. But once again, we want to echo, we sent this to over 200 organizations and individuals. Y'all know who y'all are. We've been talking to a lot of them before. We sent it to funders. We talked to the funders about the war and about program pacification. We also following up with all of you all. We haven't really heard from that many people. You know, circle back on us. We trying to, a lot of people were saying that we needed to make an argument and, you know, do all this legal and stuff because they just wasn't, program pacification had things so cloudy, and a lot of people probably just don't believe Black liberation tradition that it's evidence, it's scholarship, it's a legacy, you know, that we built civilization, that we really broke Asada out of prison, that, you know, we really built the non-traditional approach that built transformative justice. People don't believe our legacy. So hopefully this article, you know, had some of those arguments and those evidence in it that people was asking us to share. When we went into this cooker, you know, H.O.L.L.A is, you know, we grassroots, but we do a lot of writing, a lot of scholarship. And, you know, we got a lot more in the clip, man, if people need more, man. So, and we also doing the work outside. We practicing, right? So special thanks to Dr. Alice Green, Larry Lukman White, Eddie Kibaka Ellis, Antonia, Julia, Jindu, Dr. Alejandra, Baba Jose, Mama Bibi, Kush, Jamel, the Resurrection Study Group, H.O.L.L.A, KJ, the Center for New Leadership, Dr. Ori Burton, Baba Hassan, the Greenhaven Think Tank, the Bedford Hill Sisters, Eddie Ellis' personal family, Uncle Bruce, Greer, Corky, Larry White's personal family, Trissy, you know, for all of y'all feedback, you know, all of y'all encouragement, you know, they love us. They tell us keep pushing the NTA, you know, and it was because of all of them and our families and our communities and our partners that we are able, even though we getting attacked by, you know, counterinsurgency, still stand on the NTA in a strong way with a smile and with victory on the horizon. So with that being said, it was a nice conversation. This was a tribute to our elders and our ancestors, to the long legacy of Black August, the long Attica Revolt, the new prison movement, right? This was a small ritual to honor our community-specific practices and elders who did work for liberation, who was criminalized, right? And who their ideas have been hidden, have been stolen, have been buried. We see y'all, we honor y'all. What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them
Free
all.
them all.
Free yourself, man. Free your mind. Read the article. Holla in the building.
Yeah. Also, we got some, just make sure that y'all know that we have 3 other webinars coming up, September 29th, October 13th, and October 20th. So stay tuned for more of our scholarship, more of our analysis on issues that is happening on the Black community, in the systems that are affecting the Black community, as well as ways that we are combating the war.
Free them all, free them all, free them all.
Free them all.
Make sure you have all of our flyers and and the stuff that we need to post, like you just said right now.
Yeah. No, we're getting better though. It's not horrible. It's just, we could just be more efficient, that's all.
We trying to, like I said, we trying to educate, so.
Yeah, you gotta,
You know, people, they can have mistakes pop up on the screen.
right,
Like, we don't compare that.
right.
How do you think the conversation was? Did you feel like you learned anything? What's your thoughts on the conversation?
Give me 1 second, I just wanna see how this ended. Cause I had the picture of the article up. And it's playing the song, same, different, I'm on that too.
That's right.
Yeah, I just wanna see where, I stopped the live, I wanna see where it ended. I think it ended with master.
Oh, I gotta listen to this,
We gotta do some, there's some things, alright, I think there's also some things I wanna do. Tomorrow, Isaac, go to bed today. Yeah, I told him, I said, he's trying to download Amazon, cause now he got Zoom.